Adjunct Professor Moran, Macroeconomics 111. We're going to discuss monetary policy with respect to the net export effect, or the net export effect with respect to monetary policy, actually. We talked about the net export effect with regard to fiscal policy, and we noticed that when fiscal policy, expansionary fiscal policy, for example, using G&T to push aggregate demand to the right from the horizontal range to the middle of the intermediate range to achieve full employment, that would affect price level. There'd be since we're in the intermediate range now, there will be an increase in the price level. Since the quantity of money is fixed, there'll be a change in interest rates for the real balance, foreign purchase, and interest rate effect. That's going to, when that interest rate changes, it's going to change the demand for dollars as investors around the world try to take their money and invest it in the country with the highest interest rate. Since interest rates would be going up in our economy, the demand for the dollar would go up. As the demand for the dollar goes up, it looks like foreign goods got cheaper and domestic goods to them got more expensive, so XN would decline, and that's going to push XN backwards in a counterproductive way. That's because fiscal policy is about G&T, not interest rates, but it will affect interest rates unintentionally and in a counterproductive way. There's a prior handout, the prior video on this, and if you want to review that in more detail, use that video. We're now going to explore, and that cause and effect chain is described on the back of this handout in full, the cause and effect that I just described. And now we're going to do the cause and effect for monetary policy. Fiscal and monetary policy both affect interest rates. This will cause investors to change the amount of U.S. securities they buy. Think of it as a bank, as two banks next to each other. You would deposit your money in the bank with the higher interest rate. If you're an international investor, you could deposit your money in any country around the world and buy the investments of the countries with the higher interest rate. This will impact the value of the dollar because investors have to buy U.S. securities in U.S. dollars or foreign investments in foreign currency. Each must be paid for with the local currency, and as a result, when currency rates change, imports and exports will change. That's because although the price in the domestic country may not change, because the exchange rate changed, it will take more or less currency of the other country to buy that country's currency. This impact on imports and exports will impact net exports, one of the four components of aggregate demand. Because fiscal and monetary policy impact interest rates in opposite ways, given their expansionary and contractionary policy, this will impact net exports in opposite ways. The net export fiscal policy works against the desired outcome. It pushes back. This is an expansionary fiscal policy. The net export effect pushes back because of the unintended impact the change in prices has on interest rates, which will then affect exchange rates, making our exports look less attractive to other countries and their imports look more attractive to us because our dollar strengthened in value because the demand for it went up as investors seek to buy dollars to buy our investments because of higher interest rates. Monetary policy will reinforce the desired outcome because monetary policy is focusing on interest rates. So an expansionary monetary policy is one that lowers interest rates. That would make the U.S. a less attractive place to invest in. The value of the dollar would fall. That means that their currency can buy more of our currency, and they will buy more of our exports. But as the dollar weakens, it takes more of our currency to buy their currency, and as a result, imports look more expensive. So XN gets larger, and the net export effect is reinforcing the expansionary result of monetary policy. Okay, that's the explanation of the net export effect, and here is a description of it both from an expansionary point of view and a contractionary point of view. Just to remind you of why exchange rates have such a dramatic impact on exports and imports. This example was provided in the original net export effect when we talked about fiscal policy, but we will review it again here to review. Here's the dollar, here's a euro. Let's say they trade at parity of $1 for €1. And let's say there's a Chevy for $20,000 and a VW that you can buy for 20,000 euros. If an expansionary monetary policy, one causing the economy to shift to the right, that would be caused by an open market operation that increases the supply of money from S1 to S2 And you can see the result is a lower interest rate equilibrium. Lower interest rates will cause C and IG to increase, causing this increase. But the lower interest rate will cause a lesser demand for the dollar, because it's not as profitable to invest in the United States anymore. Let's call this 2 and 2. If there's less demand for the dollar, then it won't take 2 euros to buy a dollar. It will only take 1 euro to buy $2. The dollar is weakening because it takes fewer euros to buy the dollar. Well, that Chevy now will only cost 10,000 euros, because you can get 20,000 euros for 10,000 euros. As a result, our exports will increase. But for an American to buy a 20,000 euro car, it takes $2 to buy 1 euro. It would take $40,000 to buy a 20,000 euro car, so our imports will decrease. That means XN is increasing, and that is reinforcing the impact of expansionary monetary policy. You can work through contraction by following the cause and effect chain provided here. The cause and effect chain I just described is in this column. Monetary policy, the use of quantity of money and interest rates to change equilibriums from recessionary to full employment or inflationary to full employment.